Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I'm doing another DBZ video, so I hope y'all are excited. Today we're talking about everyone's favorite villains turned heroes of the Z Fighters, Vegeta versus Piccolo. Now I thought to myself, I'm already going to cover them fight within a certain saga of Dragon Ball Z, so I might as well cover the rest of them as well. And specifically, this is going to be just in Dragon Ball Z, not Dragon Ball Super. But real quick, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel, and if you like today's content, be sure to hit that like button. I can't tell y'all enough how much I appreciate the support y'all keep giving, especially as I try to cover topics such as Dragon Ball, Marvel, and Game of Thrones, and so on and so forth. Y'all are the best subscribers, don't ever forget that. With all that said, let's get into the video. So I suppose there's no better saga to start with than the Saiyan Saga. And this should be an obvious one. Vegeta decimates Piccolo, likely with one shot. I mean, Piccolo did pretty decent against Nappa, all things considered, but there's not much he'd be able to do against Vegeta, so I think we can safely move on. Next up, we have the Namek Saga, and this is where we start getting to the territory of these fighters one-upping each other. So, Vegeta actually becomes way stronger than he was during his fight with Goku back on Earth. Through a couple of Zenkaipus, he was able to beat the likes of Zarbon, Jace from the Ginyu Force, and does so rather easily. By the time Frieza actually has to step in and get involved, Vegeta is actually able to at least tangle with Frieza in his first form. Now, on the other hand, Piccolo, after his respective training on King Kai's planet, he and the rest of the Z Fighters are able to go toe-to-toe with and actually beat some of the members of the Ginyu Force, excluding, obviously, Captain Ginyu. Which means, by extension, Piccolo is now way stronger than Vegeta that got manhandled by Recoome in their fight. By the time Piccolo gets on Namek, he encounters Nail. And off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you who would be stronger between the two, but I probably would go with Piccolo since Nail seemed pretty surprised at how strong Piccolo is, and also because of his training with King Kai's planet, as I mentioned earlier. Now, considering Vegeta's short little power struggle against first form Frieza, this would mean that this Vegeta is at least stronger than Piccolo is without being fused with Nail. As being Piccolo is a little bit stronger than Nail, this means Piccolo would fare just slightly better than Nail did against Frieza, which was not that much. But soon after, Vegeta gets terrified and thrashed by a following second form Frieza, to which, after fusing with Nail, Piccolo goes on to beat pretty handily, meaning by extension he's stronger than that current Vegeta. But then Vegeta does get another Zenkaipus as a result of Krillin almost killing him and Dende reviving him. Now, there's a couple of things to note about this respective power boost. So on the one hand, Vegeta powers up in front of Final Form Frieza. Krillin, Gohan, and even Piccolo are shocked at his strength. And right before this, they're shocked at Vegeta's speed as he's able to get Gohan out of the line of fire from Frieza's blast, to which even Piccolo notes that he himself wasn't able to see the attack, but it's crazy that Vegeta was. Of course, implying Vegeta is faster than Piccolo. But what's funny is that while those are a couple of implications on how much more stronger Vegeta is compared to Piccolo, Vegeta ends up doing just as much or even as little as Piccolo, Gohan, and Krillin do when they all try to attack Frieza. Like, both in the manga and the anime, Vegeta isn't able to hit Frieza once. Outside of his speed feat noted earlier, the only real noteworthy thing he does is when he fires his ki blast at Frieza. Frieza actually has a look of shock and goes out of his way to kick the blast in order to deflect it, implying he thought it was at least dangerous enough to do so, since it's likely he would have been able to blow up planet Namek and thereby meeting himself. Though it's odd because Frieza can survive in the vacuum of space, but maybe he was worried about his spaceship or something. I'm not sure. So this is to say is that I'm not too sure where Vegeta's power caps out at here, because we never did see a full-on fight with him after his Zenkai boost. But we know he's at least stronger than second form Frieza and substantially weaker than final form Frieza, so he's got to be either on the same level or slightly stronger than third form Frieza, which by extension makes him stronger than the current Piccolo. But I did want to mention a couple things. One is a feat and the other is just an implication. But the first thing is when Piccolo had Krillin and Gohan give some of their ki to him, Piccolo went charging in full force to get Frieza away from Goku so that he could ready the Spirit Bomb. Now, even though he was caught off guard, Piccolo actually kicked Frieza so hard that it sent him flying. And apparently the kick was hard enough to get Frieza some kind of mad. Like, for real, Frieza looked pretty pissed. Now, obviously, Piccolo goes on to get a good beatdown from Frieza following this, but from what it looked like in the anime, I'd actually think he took this beating about as well as Vegeta took his. Granted, Frieza did purposely prolong the beating he gave Vegeta, and Frieza had been fighting Goku for a bit when he beat down Piccolo, so he wasn't exactly at full power, but still. Something else before we move on to the implication is after the Spirit Bomb, when Frieza comes back, Frieza initially tries to kill Goku with his death beam, and Piccolo is actually fast enough to get Goku out of the line of fire and takes a hit instead, which is actually very similar to what Vegeta had done with Gohan earlier. So I'm not exactly saying Piccolo is on the exact same level of speed as Vegeta, but I did think it was worth noting. Now, the implication I was alluding to earlier, it happens in the anime, so take it for what it is. But when Vegeta, Piccolo, Bulma, Gohan, and the other Nameks get wished back to Earth, Vegeta gaslights Gohan into a fight, and at the end of the fight, Vegeta looks as though he's about to finish off Gohan. Piccolo obviously steps in and says, "Not today, back off." Vegeta actually gets a bit annoyed and laments and says, "Fine, have it your way." Which I do think is interesting because this is a guy who not only didn't have a problem with possibly killing off a kid, but he also didn't have a problem killing off several Nameks earlier. And yet, when Piccolo steps in, Vegeta doesn't even so much as cop an attitude. Now, like I said, this is just an implication. It could apply a couple of things. Like, the first is that he probably just got annoyed and wanted to leave. The second is that he respected Piccolo at least enough to listen to him, or that he actually felt that Piccolo could do some serious damage to him. Especially since Gohan, who is overall weaker than Piccolo, was able to get in a few pretty good hits. So any one of these implications could be what's going on. And again, it's in the anime and doesn't even happen in the Kai version of the anime, so like I said, you can take it for what it is. But at the very least, Vegeta and Piccolo are relative enough to each other that I think it would make for a good fight. Do I think Vegeta would win more often than not? Yeah, but to be honest, not by much. I could totally see Piccolo coming out on top in this as well. I say 1 to 10, Vegeta would win like 7 out of 10 times. Moving on to Vegeta versus Piccolo in the Android Saga. Okay, so this is where we get into the territory of these two actually having equal footing, at least for a little bit. So after Trunks comes to the past and warns the rest of the Z-Fighters about the androids, all the Z-Fighters go and do their respective training to prepare. Vegeta trains alone, most of the time in the gravity chamber built by Bulma's father, and Piccolo trains with both Goku and Gohan. Now, I'm going to say something that might be a hot take and might actually piss some people off, but I actually think Piccolo was at bare minimum on the same level as Vegeta right before he became a Super Saiyan, and I think there's good call to say that he was actually stronger. Now, this is because it's sort of implied later in the arc, but Goku was able to completely surpass Vegeta when he and Gohan had their respective turn inside the hyperbolic time chamber. Like, the main reason he was able to do so was because he actually had someone to train with in Gohan. This is actually better supported through Gohan. Before going into the chamber, Gohan was substantially weaker than Vegeta and Trunks. And yet, after coming out of the chamber, it's implied that in the Cell games that Gohan's strength and power are above Goku's even in Super Saiyan 1. This is because Gohan had an actual training partner in Goku. Now, Vegeta, on the other hand, did have the opportunity to train with somebody, but chose not to. So this can actually be applied to the 3 years of training before the androids arrived. As stated earlier, Vegeta, even though he put himself through crazy and intense training in the gravity chamber, still chose to train alone. Whereas Piccolo had 3 years of straight training with both Goku and Gohan. Now, what I'm about to say is totally headcanon, but I think it's reasonable. But if Goku wanted to help Piccolo and Gohan push past their limits and get as strong as possible in preparation for the androids, then it would make sense for Goku to spar with them as a Super Saiyan, if only for a few times. Granted, we don't ever see that, but I think it's reasonable to assume. So, based off this, you could make the argument that Piccolo gained more strength and power than Vegeta did in their respective 3 years of training. This is kind of supported by the fights with androids 19 and 20. Now, Goku chose to go Super Saiyan against 19, implying that he felt like it was needed in order to fight them. Vegeta does do the same, though it's likely that he mainly did so to flex, understandably. Now, Vegeta goes on to make a complete joke out of Android 19, and after he destroys him, he then challenges Dr. Gero. Vegeta even goes so far as to call Gero out and ask him, "How do you expect to do any better than him? You're an android too." Gero replies that he's far superior to Android 19. Now, even though it's a statement coming from himself, I don't necessarily think he's wrong, but then he does proceed to flee from Vegeta, implying he doesn't think he could take him even after 19 had absorbed some of his energy. So at that moment, Vegeta is the strongest Z-Fighter, including Piccolo, who notes that it's possible Vegeta is stronger than Goku. Now, here's the thing. Gero gets 2 substantial power boosts. One in the form of Vegeta shooting a massive ki blast and Gero absorbing it, and then the other is almost draining all the energy from Piccolo. Now, it's crazy that even with these power-ups and the statement from Gero saying he was stronger than 19, that Piccolo, just like Vegeta versus 19, proceeds to make a complete joke out of Dr. Gero. Like in the manga or in the anime, there is no back and forth between them. Piccolo humiliates Dr. Gero. Krillin in both the anime and the manga actually compares his power to that of a Super Saiyan. Now, the following fights with both androids 17 and 18 soon after, Vegeta does last longer against 18 than Piccolo did against 17 in their first encounter. But I think it's implied that 17 put in more effort from the start against his rest of the Z fighters than 18 did against Vegeta. I know at the beginning she said she was holding back, and in the anime, she even said that she might have to go to full power when fighting Vegeta, but based off the looks of the fight, she seemed like she didn't even need to. And now I say this because even though Piccolo didn't last as long at 17 as Vegeta did with 18, it's shown that Piccolo took the same amount of hits it took for the androids to take care of Trunks when he also tried to help Vegeta. And Trunks is more or less on the same level as Vegeta. Plus, I think it's also worth pointing out that 17 is stronger than 18. So both Trunks and Piccolo had to go up against the stronger of the two. So given the 3 years of training with the actual partners, plus the performances against androids 17, 18, 19, and 20, I think that Piccolo and Vegeta are a lot closer in strength than they ever had been before. Narratively, Vegeta is likely stronger, but if so, it can't be by much given what we have to go off of. If it came down to an actual fight between the two, I think it would be a tie more often than not, though if Vegeta ends up hitting Piccolo with a big bang attack, similar to the one he used against 19, that he could end up destroying him completely. But I mean, if Piccolo's head is still intact, again similar to 19, then he technically still could regenerate. Likewise though, with as strong as this Piccolo is, I could just see it as likely Piccolo being able to finish Vegeta off with a full power special beam cannon or something. So again, while I do think Vegeta is overall a bit stronger, I think if it were to come down to a fight between them, that it could go either way, with whoever winning about 5.5, maybe 6 out of 10 times. Now fast forward to the Cell Saga. Obviously we know that Piccolo becomes the strongest Z fighter after reuniting with Kami, including Vegeta, who Vegeta himself actually admits this. But after Vegeta's first respective time in the time chamber, he of course surpasses Piccolo, even shocking Piccolo when Vegeta powers up and fights Semi-Perfect Cell. But then Piccolo also has his turn inside the time chamber as well, again surpassing Vegeta that fought Semi-Perfect Cell. Ignoring the advice given by Goku, Vegeta goes into the time chamber for a second time. And I think this is again where Piccolo and Vegeta seem to be more equal than people might think. Now obviously Vegeta does get stronger, but after he comes out of the time chamber the second time, but Piccolo isn't as shocked after he comes out of the time chamber the second time as he was the first time, which could imply Vegeta didn't gain as much ground as the first time he went in, which is backed up by Goku's advice earlier. He says that going into the chamber for another year of intense training without giving yourself time to rest won't do you much good. Like, yeah, you'll get stronger, but you'll get more out of your second time in the chamber if you take the time to rest. So while it's easy to assume Vegeta is stronger than Piccolo here, I don't think it's by much, since it's implied in the manga and shown in the anime that Piccolo did just as good, if not better, against the Cell Juniors than Trunks and Vegeta. In the manga, his performance is taken off panel, but it's implied he's fighting relative to them in the chapter cover when Gohan explodes into Super Saiyan 2, as everyone, including a post-Cell fight Goku, is on the ground except for Trunks, Vegeta, and Piccolo. In the anime, it's shown that Piccolo is doing the best against them, like he's absolutely putting in work. Now Vegeta was able to do slightly more damage to Cell than Piccolo did, and by extension the rest of the Z fighters, during the Kamehameha beam struggle, though it's implied it took everything in Vegeta to do so. So I think the best way to look at this is Vegeta is overall a bit stronger than Piccolo here, but Piccolo might be an overall better fighter. I haven't really talked much about intelligence yet, and that's because in Dragon Ball there aren't too many fights that have strategy incorporated in them. But while Vegeta was stated by Frieza to be an excellent tactician, I think Piccolo is wiser and has a calmer demeanor that allows him to think more clearly. Plus, having Kami with him helps in that regard as well. I think this is a fight that honestly could go either way, but if Piccolo actually plays it smart, combining this with his regeneration and the feats we have to go off of, then I think he has a pretty good opportunity to win this. Again, whoever wins this round will be like a 5.5, maybe 6 out of 10 times. And finally, we have the last round in the Buu Saga. Now, I'm just going to be talking about this fight within the confines of the World Tournament at the beginning of the Buu Saga, meaning that this is going to be Piccolo fighting base Vegeta. Now, since I briefly covered this topic in my Majin Piccolo vs. Gohan video that I did a month ago, I'll let my month of June counterpart do a quick recap.
Now, fast forward to the Buu arc, and I'll say this right from the jump. Vegeta does train harder than Piccolo. Heck, maybe even anyone else. This is remarked by Goku himself when he fights Majin Vegeta. He states that even though he's been training like crazy in Otherworld, there's a really good chance that Vegeta had been training just as hard, if not harder. So I'm not denying Vegeta is stronger than Piccolo by the beginning of the Buu arc, but I do think it's worth noting that Piccolo also trains, and likely had trained during the 7-year time skip. It's stated by the beginning of the Android Saga that Piccolo trains to escape boredom, and if we assume he spent most, if not all, the 7 years up at Kami's Lookout, I'd imagine he'd get pretty boring, so what else is there to do? Now, if I'm going to guess, I'd say it's likely that half of the training Piccolo did was his meditation, which is again another type of training, but it's also just as likely that the other half was physically training as well. And we saw 2 good examples of how Piccolo makes good use of his years of training. During the 3-year time skip in preparation for the androids, Piccolo went from being only to be able to beat second form Frieza to being able to completely stomp someone stronger than final form Frieza, that of course being Dr. Gero. And the second example is what we talked about earlier. His 1 year in the time chamber took him from being weaker than Imperfect Cell, albeit with a massive power boost due to absorbing countless humans, to being stronger than Super Vegeta when he fought Semi-Perfect Cell. And in the Buu arc, in the anime at least, before the tournament, Dende says to Popo that Piccolo is stronger than he's ever been. This is of course being stronger than he was in the Cell games. So with all this, it's possible to put Piccolo on the same level as Super Saiyan Goku in the Cell games at worst, and at best, around base Goku to Super Saiyan Goku in the beginning of the Buu Saga. Something else to possibly consider is Piccolo is pretty upfront about his strength and abilities, and the fact that he thought he'd do well enough against the Saiyans in the tournament could say something, as I'm sure Piccolo is aware that Goku and Vegeta in particular still train on the regular. Though you could make the argument that he also might have been operating on the assumption that every one of them would be fighting in base and not Super Saiyan, but if that is the case, then it would at least help the argument of putting him relative to base Goku and Vegeta.
Now, with all this said, I do think this fight is probably as close as it gets to this point in the video. Like, I think this one definitely could go either way. I know some people are going to be like, Piccolo lost to Dabura and Vegeta said that he could beat Dabura, and while I'm not arguing that last part, I do think it's a bit odd to use this as an anti-feat because most people in Dragon Ball don't just spit on each other, and Supreme Kai even notes to himself that he was a fool for not telling them ahead of time. So using the spit as an anti-feat isn't really fair, but besides, Vegeta also does say that the spit is likely the most dangerous thing about Dabura. So and also people will say that Dabura sensed the Z fighters up at the hill before they actually encountered Dabura, and Dabura says that only 3 of them have substantial power, being Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan. But I will note that Piccolo was suppressed because he did have his weighted clothes on, and speaking of that, he went into the tournament with his weighted gear on, meaning that he was going to go toe-to-toe with whoever he fought, being Goku, Gohan, or Vegeta, with his weights on at first. So he was totally confident that he could still take the base Saiyans while still being suppressed by his weighted gear. So meaning that if he took his gear off, that he would do even better. So I honestly think this fight could go either way, and I know this is going to piss some people off, but we're talking about base Vegeta versus Piccolo here. I'd actually probably give this to Piccolo. Because also, if you remember, when Trunks accidentally knocked Piccolo's statue over and broke him into pieces, it only took like less than a minute for Piccolo to regenerate his entire body to be completely 100% again, which is implying that his regen is a lot faster than it's ever been before. So if Vegeta is somehow not able to like take Piccolo's head off, like clean off, then Piccolo can regenerate likely just as fast as Majin Buu. Maybe not that fast, but maybe like as fast as Cell. So Vegeta is gonna be fighting Piccolo for a while, and if he can't turn Super Saiyan, then I think Piccolo has this one in the bag. But yeah, I think Piccolo has this one like 6, maybe 7 out of 10 times. I know people are gonna be really mad about that, but I just think Piccolo has more of an opportunity to win this one. So there y'all have it. There's the rest of the video. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all did enjoy. Please let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you think I'm just giving Piccolo too much credit in the last round, but I think Vegeta obviously wins more rounds than not in this video. So hopefully y'all don't get too mad. But thank you all for watching all the way to the end. If you have, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, click the bell for more notifications. Till my next one, like the snow, out.